Everyone in. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ariel Rivers, NACD's Pacific Region Representative, and I will facilitate this 1-hour NACD Urban and Community Conservation webinar. Thank you for joining us to learn about collaborative invasive species management. We will record this webinar and post it on NACD's website, along with a PDF of the presentation for future access. Please share widely with your networks and anyone who may be interested in seeing this or previous presentations. Please keep yourself muted for the duration of today's webinar. After the presentations, we will have a question and answer session. Please type your questions in the chat box and I will read them out loud for the recording. We'll address as many as we can in the time that we have. Now I'd like to introduce Ron Rohal to provide a few introductory comments. Ron is chair of NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, which is part of our Natural Resources Policy Committee. Ron?
Hey, thank you, Ariel, and I welcome all of you to the monthly Urban and Community Conservation webinars offered by the National Association of Conservation Districts through our sole sponsor, the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company. These sessions are designed by NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, a subcommittee of district officials and partners charged with guiding the association's services and support for districts' work in developed and developing areas. Our goal through these webinars is to help districts share what they are doing nationwide and enable them to learn from each other and various agencies and organizations. We appreciate the support of the Scotts Miracle-Gro Foundation for making them possible. And I invite you to let us know what you think about each webinar and what other topics you would like us to cover by contacting NACD staffer Ariel Rivers. And please tell our NACD leadership what type of assistance you would like from your National Association for Urban and Community Conservation work. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Ariel for the introduction of our speakers.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. So now we will get going on our presentations. We have 3 excellent speakers today who will share information about their collaborative invasive species management area in Indiana. We'll hear from Stephanie Schuck, Executive Director of Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management, Dawn Slack, Indiana Director of Stewardship for the Nature Conservancy, and Claire Lane, Urban Conservationist with Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District. Thank you to each of you for joining us today, and I look forward to your presentations. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Claire, to get going. Or excuse me, Stephanie.
Thanks. We'll have our slides shared here in a minute, and then I'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Dawn.
Absolutely.
So thanks everyone for having us here. I'm super excited to be here and to talk about some of the amazing things that have been going on in Indiana. My name is Stephanie. I'm with the Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management, and we are going to be talking about the Indiana Invasives Initiative. We'll call that the III, which is a collaborative effort for management of invasive species across the state of Indiana. It's an agreement between SICIM, the Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasives Management, and the USDA. I probably don't have to tell you how difficult it is to deal with invasive species and what they're doing. But I will just mention a little bit, they are, of course, super expensive to deal with. It takes a lot of people power, a lot of time, a lot of effort, which means a lot of money. They are devastating our natural areas, lowering the biodiversity, altering the soil chemistry, affecting water quality, all of those things. In Indiana, we have, and I know this is a nationwide audience, so you probably have different issues that you're dealing with invasive species, and maybe you're having similar challenges as well as in Indiana. In Indiana, of course, we have like some that are rapidly spreading, we have some that are starting to spread, and then we're always on the lookout for new ones in the state. We have different organizations that focus on different areas of the state. We've got the Department of Natural Resources, we've got the NRCS, public land, but we had really no good way how to target our landowners, and specifically landowners that had 10 acres or less. And so that was one of the reasons for this initiative. We've had some early successes in Indiana with some locally led SISMAs. We'll talk a little bit about what SISMAs are in the next couple slides. And then we really wanted to know how we could leverage locally led efforts like those SISMAs that were being successful. How could we do that throughout the state? So go ahead and go to the next slide, Dawn. So I did want to mention a little bit about what SICIM is and what their interest is in this project. So formed in 2008, the goal was basically to support southern counties in Indiana, so about 35 counties within that southern area of Indiana, to form these SISMAs. So the SISMAs are Cooperative Invasive Species Management Areas. These are grassroots, locally led organizations. And in 2018, the Indiana Invasive Initiative was developed. And so that was in partnership with the USDA, NRCS, and then other entities. So you're going to hear the words partnership a lot. You're going to hear the words collaborate a lot. That is how we get things done. We couldn't do it without it. We can't expect one organization or the DNR to deal with all of this, or the NRCS to deal with all of this. It has to be a collaborative effort. And so that is what the Indiana Invasives Initiative is. And with that initiative, that then spread SICIM throughout the state, which then this month, actually, we have rebranded and we have changed our name to be the State of Indiana Cooperative Invasives Management to show a little bit more of what exactly we are doing as we are working throughout the state. SICIM's primary goals with helping form these SISMAs were to provide resources and guidance to them. We, of course, don't have a lot of time to talk about all those things, but the SICIM website has all kinds of information. So feel free to go there. We can put that in the chat. We can make sure that you have that information so you can go to SICIM's website and see what they've been up to the last several years. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the contribution agreement. So it, like I had mentioned, of course, this was to create SISMAs throughout Indiana with a lofty goal of wanting one SISMA within each county of Indiana. That is a pretty lofty goal. And of course, the purpose is to promote awareness. So awareness is probably the most important thing right next to partnerships, because if people aren't aware of the issues that invasive species bring, they don't know to care. And if they don't know to care, then they might not. So providing awareness, providing education, educating our communities about what invasive species do and what they can do to help. And so also, like I'd mentioned, creating these SISMAs throughout the state of Indiana. What is a SISMA? I mentioned a little bit about it. So they're grassroots efforts. They are community organizations. They're partnering organizations. They're combining efforts within these partnerships. They can be county or state or federal government agencies. They can be nonprofits. They can be citizens groups. They can be everything and all. And you'll hear from Claire about their efforts and their different partners within HIP. They're also working at the local level. So that's a really important piece of that. Go ahead to the next slide. And so some of the nuts and bolts with the contribution agreement. So it is a 5-year agreement. There are a lot of details, so I'm just going to give you some bullets here today. So of course, fundraising is involved. So SICIM is required to match 50% of the funding that is received by the NRCS for that 5-year agreement. Within that, SICIM hired regional specialists. So that is the statewide portion. So we have regional specialists throughout the state that each have their own counties that they work in to help create these SISMAs, to help bring these partners together and then help keep these SISMAs sustainable. So what can we do to help these SISMAs be independent and go forth and do their own things? So how they do that is they assist the SISMAs with landowner visits. So ideally the SISMAs are able to go, I mentioned these landowner surveys with landowners that have less than 10 acres. So going to do site visits and helping them understand what species are on their property, good and bad. So what invasive species do you have? What should you target? What's your, what should you target first? And then here's your long-term plan. So developing those management plans. And then of course, education and events, helping them learn where to do educational events, how to do them, providing resources and materials for that. And of course, our regional specialists also conduct their own site visits while they're working with the SISMAs and training them to be able to do them on their own, writing those management plans and helping our landowners in Indiana to deal with the invasive species on their properties. And as I mentioned, of course, conducting outreach and training, so education. So once you're aware of what the species are or what invasive species do, then you need to learn about other things, right? So plant identification, it could be restoration techniques for our SISMAs. We have Lunch and Learn, a quarterly Lunch and Learn program where we talk about different needs that they have and helping them to go forward. Go ahead to the next slide. So we just wanted to show you that it's not just Indiana. So SISMAs are not an Indiana thing, they are a national thing. And so this gives you a good idea of where SISMAs are forming or have been formed in the state of Indiana. Next slide. And this is our current program. So we have had up to 6 regional specialists throughout the state of Indiana. This is the map that shows you where they work, the different counties that they cover. We have 1 project coordinator, which is Dawn, and you'll hear from her soon. 1 executive director, that is me. And then of course our SICIM board and committee members, and then those partners. So the Clean Water Indiana program, which is through the State Soil Board, our SWCDs, Extension, DNR, Department of Agriculture, private entities, conservation organizations like land trusts, and of course our parks and recs departments. They help out tremendously, especially with weed wrangles and events and things like that. So I think Dawn, you're up.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So I'm just going to give a nice overview really about the Indiana Invasives Initiative itself, and then we'll let Claire dive into that really deep grassroots level of what's going on in just one of our counties. Stephanie did a great job of describing what a SISMA is, and I just want to reiterate one thing, and she said we would do this throughout this program, and that it is a collaborative effort and it is partnerships. The last thing that we really want to do with our program is to reinvent the wheel. We are not here to do that. We are here to facilitate and build capacity for invasive species management. We know that some entities are doing it. We don't want to step on their toes. We want to come in and support them and lift their efforts. So it's very important, as Stephanie mentioned, that we work on the grassroots level. And for Indiana, that's within each and every single county that we can. We want to engage and empower those folks so that they feel like they are responsible, they know the information, and now they can take the responsibility and find the solution. So in Indiana so far, after 4 years, we are working in about 71 counties, and they're colored on the map there. 34 of those counties representing about 33 to 34 SISMAs represent about 36 to 40 counties. And if they're blue on the map, those are the counties that we feel like could stand on their own at this time. They have a mission statement, they have goals and objectives that are written, and they have committees that are there to make sure that their goals and objectives are fulfilled. Those that are in orange on this map, we consider those to be in the organizational phase, and those counties are working to write their mission statement. They've identified their partners, they're working with those partners, and they're trying to figure out just how that SISMA fits into what's already happening in the county. So they're going to develop a mission statement, they're going to develop goals and objectives, and identify committees to ensure that their goals and objectives then are fulfilled. The green counties are those that have kind of raised their hand. They're certainly doing things, and typically the regional specialists may even be leading some of those outreach activities in those green counties, but they're there. They just haven't pulled all of those partners together yet to identify a core group that will then move forward. So what are our SISMAs doing? What are these counties doing? And they are doing a lot, but again, their primary goal is, in order for them to be effective at educating, engaging, and empowering, they've got to partner and find those resources locally. So they're working with multiple local partners to build that robust SISMA for their area. They're conducting programs like swapping invasive shrubs for native ones. They're erecting billboards. Some of them are hiring invasive species technicians. They're partnering with local RC&Ds. Some of them are even developing strike teams, which I'll dive into just a little bit because that's a sweet spot. They're securing funds to conduct invasive species management on, for say, county parks or other public spaces. They're even conducting right-of-way training courses that are open to their transportation departments. And we all know what a road or something like that can do to the spread of invasive species. They're working on ordinances. They're holding open house events to network with their local nursery and landscape business, for example. They're developing those strong partnerships with HOAs. If you've worked with an HOA, you know what a challenge that can be. They're engaging citizens to map invasive species. They're writing management plans. They're holding weed wrangles, clearing trails of invasive species. And as Stephanie mentioned, they are spreading the work and working with those private landowners. So how many landowner surveys have we done? Who's participating in this? Well, over the 3.5 to 4 years that our group has been doing this, we have conducted over 450 landowner surveys. And that means that we have written management plans. And it's actually, this number is a little low. I need to update all of our data, but we've written management plans for over 18,000 acres across the state of Indiana in 3.5 to 4 years. And I just want to reiterate, that's volunteering. We're not out there peddling and knocking on doors. These folks are raising their hand and saying, I just want to be a part of this. And that comes right back to that educating, engaging, and empowering. And once you know, you're ready to solve the problem. We've done over 700 outreach events. We've held over 3 SISMA conferences. As Stephanie mentioned, we do quarterly calls, annual training throughout the state. We have a website. Check out the SICIM.info website for all kinds of information. And you know, the really sweet spot, if you look on the right there, the map and all of those blue dots are just, it's not all of them, but just representing where we're working, where our landowner surveys have been and where some of our weed wrangles have been held. And you know, when we're out there on the landscape and we're doing these free activities, this is free landowner surveys. These are free events. We are engaging with that landowner. We're just talking and walking, chatting, getting to know each other. We will write a management plan to address any issues that we find, and we'll give them a list of resources to help them. But no, the picture in the middle is an infestation of Japanese barberry. We did not know that we had this in the state of Indiana. We found it doing this work. And you may think, oh my gosh, you just found another problem. But the key to this is, oh my gosh, we've got this in the state of Indiana. We didn't know it. We now have the power to fix it. Knowledge leads to solution finding. And that's what this program is about. And on the left, of course, is another sweet find that we found this year, and that's a native Phragmites. So a small population that's left. We're finding all of this stuff when we're out there walking with our neighbors and talking. We're getting out of the house and engaging. So weed wrangles, these are events for us to engage the public directly. They're not from Indiana. However, we kind of adopted and tweaked it just a little bit. And we use this as a platform for our SISMAs to really engage with groups right there in their hometown green space, someplace that they love. So we get people together and we do a great job of advertising, or I hope. And then we hold our weed wrangle where we teach folks how to identify, how to treat something, and then we put them to work, because we don't want to just show up and do nothing. We spend the next couple of hours actually working with them. We try to do a weed wrangle in the same spot at least 3 times, because it's not a one and done with invasives. So we need to instill in them that you got to come back. This is your beloved green space. Come on back and help us. And also, this is the work that you can take home and do at home. We've conducted over 200 weed wrangles in the state of Indiana over the last 3.5 years. And in this year alone, we did over 112. And we're a little overwhelmed with the amazing response that we've had. It's all good. SISMA conferences, again, Stephanie says we do lots of outreach, and we do. We've held 3 SISMA conferences. We held a summit this year with a partner with our Illinois partners, and we just offer these events all year. These are really important. These are times whenever we bring everybody together, one location, sometimes over Zoom, depending on what what challenges we're facing. But it allows us to get our experts and our novices in the room together to share information, to take advantage of research opportunities, and to really get out and network and learn together. One-stop shop. This year, we were lucky enough to have a 4-day conference. It was amazing. And our SISMAs really jumped in, our SISMAs and our conservation partners jumped in, and we had 10 field event locations scattered throughout the state where folks could see exactly what does it look like when we restore something. And lastly, before I kind of wrap up these last 2 slides, we're also starting this, I love this, and these are invasive plant management teams. I call them strike teams. And this is our first year to really get these out and on the ground. And this is a committee of the SISMA. They have, we have provided them with funding to get some tools, get some herbicide, and to get their pesticide license. And they're a committee, they go out, partner with that DNR forestry, that state park, that local park, that land trust, and they get to work. And with a written management plan, they are working and building that capacity to get right into those sweet spots and do some work on the ground that would not have happened without them. And this is crucial. Some of these sweet spots are rare fins and other types of ecosystems that we really do need to pay attention to. And these groups are doing exactly that. So to wrap it up, lots of things going on in Indiana. Not only do we have the Invasives Initiative, Indiana Invasives Initiative, we've got a council that was able to pass an invasive terrestrial plant rule in 2019 after many years of hard work to get it there. We've got conservation funding. We have partners such as land trust and soil water conservation districts and private landowners, people doing lots of work, and we are building that capacity and opportunity for success in Indiana. So with that, I'm going to bring it on down to Claire, and she can do the deep dive.
Thanks, Dawn. So yeah, I am representing a SWCD and one of those local SISMAs to kind of show you what it looks like at our level. So Hamilton County Invasives Partnership is our SISMA. I've got our website and social media there. Dawn, if you want to move on to the next slide. Wanted to give you guys a little context about Hamilton County. That blue square there is where we are in the state, kind of right in the middle, just above Indianapolis, which is our capital. Pretty big population wise, 350,000, generally pretty affluent, pretty educated, fastest growing county in Indiana, and one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, actually. And then one kind of unique thing that's been important for our SISMA and our collaborations and partnerships has been that we have 7 parks departments of varying sizes. A little more context about our district specifically, we have full-time staff. So we kind of are jack of all trades, Jack and Jills of all trades, that do education, technical work, all of the different stuff. And then we have 2 part-time staff, one that does administration and one that does some outreach work. Our budget, not counting any grants or employee compensation, is around $50,000 just for programs. Go on, Dawn. So we started working with SICIM in late 2018, early 2019 to start organizing a SISMA in Hamilton County. We had some early organizational meetings that were attended by a variety of parks departments. We had municipalities, environmental organizations, and just general public who were interested in invasive species. So from those early meetings, we really quickly identified that we wanted to pursue dedicated leadership for our SISMA, and it became apparent early on that it made sense for that to happen through the SWCD because we were countywide. So on this slide there, I just got our mission statement and some of our really important partners that we collaborated with to make our SISMA happen. Go on, Don. So our focus was definitely on invasive species, and we started organizing around trying to get support to build capacity that we would have for that leadership of our SISMA. So there were two kind of components of that, a grassroots effort that was really centered around the individual citizens in our coalition working to build support, and then what the SWCD did on the other side. So we really started a campaign to focus on educating our county council and commissioners on the threat of invasive species, what that means for Hamilton County, and the opportunities for leadership on that subject through the SWCD. So we actually started making a play to convert a part-time employee we already had to a full-time permanent employee. Interestingly, that employee had started with us as part of a NACD urban agriculture grant. We were trying to retain him, but we also identified that there was a lot of need for urban technical assistance support, but also technical support needed through the SISMA. So yeah, we already had the employee. We were trying to retain him, and we saw this as kind of a mechanism that we could meet a lot of needs through one effort. And I saw you sign on here, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. He's not with us anymore. He moved on to Placer County in California, but we miss him. So yeah, we started focusing on the invasives on the grassroots side. Our kind of public membership started contacting local elected officials. We had kind of a coordinated campaign with example text and letters, made phone lists of phone numbers and emails for people's elected officials, and maps, making it really easy for people to connect. I think a lot of times you see that on a more like state elected official level or national, but we really shrunk that down to our local council and commissioner districts. We had an education campaign among landowners, HOAs, and environmental groups just to really kind of like encourage education on the topic and why it was a big deal and why the county needed this group and why it was important to have county-wide leadership of it at the SWCD. So on our side, the things we started doing was inviting council and commissioner members to our meetings, meeting with counselors one-on-one, inviting them to tour sites and meet their own constituents. So that top photo there, we're with one of our counselors where we took him out to meet with one of the local parks departments to talk about their needs, and also a private landowner to tour their property and talk about invasive species. Had a big impact. We also partnered with, for example, our county parks. They have an annual elected officials bus tour around their properties. So we partnered with them to be a part of that day, where they talked about how invasive species are impacting our county properties and the money that is costing the counselors in the county, and how a SISMA would be a big part of addressing that. And then we also just tried to show through a few different ways that there was a lot of demonstrated need for additional technical support through the SWCD. We were getting more requests than we could fulfill. So we really were just trying to show the need, show our worth, and show the opportunities that could be opened up through their investment in our SISMA. Go ahead. So ultimately, we were successful with that. Our full-time position started in January of 2020, right before COVID. We used late 2019, when we knew that position was happening, to do a lot of planning and organization so we could really hit the ground running. We didn't want to get caught up in a drawn-out process of finding our footing, so to speak. So we brought in some partners from the Purdue University Extension. They have a program called Conservation Through Community Leadership. So they came in to really help us fast track the organizational development of our SISMA and help us drill down our mission and vision and first steps really quickly. So it's pretty cheap. I think it was less than $200 to have them come in and lead some of these sessions. Totally worth it. We're having a lot of really high engagement at that time. So it really helped us to make good use of having so many people interested at that moment. So I have some photos there of some of the mission and other meetings that they helped us lead. So we knew in our SISMA that we really wanted to focus on having cohesive invasive species education and management presence across the county. We have the southern, like half to 2/3 of our county is pretty urban, suburban. There's 4 big cities, and then the rural, or the top third, northern third, is more rural and agricultural. So we knew that we wanted to have really cohesive messages, particularly across the whole county, but particularly across the 4 southern communities. We wanted to have people hearing the same messages, whether they were in Carmel or Fishers or Noblesville or Westfield. We wanted people doing control and treatment in those areas to have access to each other, to learn what was working, what's not working, what are we seeing, what are the gaps, just general, the collaboration and partnership that Stephanie and Dawn talked about. So go ahead, Dawn. We really focused early too on getting our name out there to build a lot of credibility and interest in our programs. So just, some different programs and articles we had featured in local papers, online, and then also in our bigger kind of metropolitan newspaper, the Indianapolis Star. We had a few pieces, or we're part of a few pieces on invasive species as well. Next one, Dawn. So now I just want to get into some of the things you've heard a little bit about before that we're putting into action through our SISMA. We're doing public and private property assessments, where we go out and survey with people and develop management plans. We also are doing a lot of education. We had a lot planned in 2020 that got, like everyone, sidetracked by COVID. So we pivoted, as everyone did, to a lot of online offerings. We kept that going, but we're trying to see how we can get that back out in the field like everyone is. So an example of one we did online this year was emerging invasive plants in central Indiana. Go ahead, Dawn. The weed wrangles we've been doing as well. So we've got some photos there. Weed wrangles, I think, are a really good entry point for SWCDs. So HIP itself as a SISMA, or even the SWCD, we do not organize these weed wrangles. That's not how we've set ours up. So basically we're just the person who at the top is bringing all of our partners together. A lot of them were already hosting these kind of events anyway. So we brought everyone together to say, this is a weed wrangle. This is what it is, or what we want it to be in Hamilton County. You're already doing this, you're doing something similar. Let's pull it all together. Let's call them weed wrangles. Let's have a similar, kind of look and feel for each event. And then if they're branded all together, we can promote them all together. We can say, Hamilton County weed wrangles, and you can go to our website and you can find one near you. So we're bringing everything that's happening across the county to one space under the weed wrangles. So those are our volunteer events. Their education events. And then hopefully you guys can read that there, a comment I pulled off Facebook, somebody just talking about what a great event it was for them and their son to be involved and learn something. So really great feedback on those. Go ahead, Dawn. A few more photos. We've got, city and parks partners involved in those. We have some that are appropriate for kids to be involved with. We've also utilized a lot of signage as part of those events. So we have kind of pre, during, and post temporary signage. So ones that say invasive species are on this site and some work is going to be done. We have signs that say volunteers at work and lead people back to HIP. And then we have signs that say restoration in progress, invasive species have been removed, and we're working on restoring. Go ahead, Dawn. Our strike team is another, it's kind of been like a slow burn over the last year and a half. The strike team is kind of our like target force, where Weed Wrangle is volunteer event. Our strike team are trained individuals that can go out and following a management plan, do targeted specific work in a park or a natural area. So with Weed Wrangles, we're doing more like hand pulling, puller bars, things like that. Whereas our strike team use herbicides and some other hand tools. So we were a little slow getting going with our strike team because as the CISMA lives at the SWCD, I was pretty concerned with protecting the district and the county as far as liability goes. And if you've ever, worked with a legal team of any kind of government, that can be tricky and move pretty slowly. So that slowed us down this year, getting all the liability sorted out, waivers, trainings, all that kind of stuff. We finally got it rolling in August of this year, and they were able to still do 3 or 4 events in the fall, and they've been really successful. And we found that the engagement in those, the people that are attending those, are really finding it very fulfilling, because they're able to really just get in there and do a lot of work really quickly. So that's been a really cool project. We had the first ever invasive species awareness week in our county. So as part of that overall effort, we had a lot of weed wrangles, educational events, but we also launched our Bootbrush Station program. So these are available pretty easily from like Play Clean Go. We sourced our own and did our own signage, but there are resources that you can just purchase if you don't have the capacity to do that. So another pretty easy entry point for people. But we have 7 installed so far. We did our big launch during the Invasive Species Awareness Week, kind of made it, a fun thing, invited the public, invited our council and commissioners, had them come and gave them a photo op to kind of, display back to their constituents that they were supporting these efforts. So that's been a really fun program. We have 7 installed so far, and by the end of next year, we'll have 22 in the ground. Go to the next slide, Dawn. Yeah, a little more on those, just some more photos. We have a map on our website, an interactive map where people can see where those Bootbrush stations are, and then also opportunities to sponsor the Bootbrush stations as well. Go ahead, Dawn. We also kind of kicked up at the end of this year an invasive for native trade or swap program. We have a parks department that already offers something similar with bare root seedlings. So we kind of wanted to trial it on a larger scale. We found some funds to offer 5-gallon trades. So through a form on our website, people submitted an application, showed us the invasive species that they'd removed, which got us some really fun pictures. And then we were able to give them a 5-gallon native. We did 24 of those. And it was a learning experience for sure, but overall a success. And people were really excited about it. It got people, really excited, and was a good encouragement for people that maybe like knew they had a calorie fair. But that was the final push to really get them to do something about it and get the fulfillment of replacing it as well. Next slide. We're working on a lot of stuff. We did other things this year, launched our website, all of that. We have a lot planned for 2022, but one of the things I'm really excited about is a big GIS project where we are going to be making a ArcGIS, like field maps, invasive species platform available to all of our partners. So we have a big meeting coming up in January for that, but I think it's going to have an impact, a huge impact in our county, and then more broadly as well, as far as early detection goes, but also treatment, helping our partners identify what's working and what's not, what species are threatening their properties, how species are moving around the county, maybe help us identify some pathways that we aren't aware of right now. So it's really exciting, and I think a big thing that we're going to be able to offer particularly for a lot of our parks departments that don't have the capacity to develop something on their own. It's something we're going to be able to offer them. And then also just the power and impact that will come from having all of that data in one place. It's really exciting. So last slide there, some of our just, quick final thoughts, successes. We've had really great buy-in from our parks partners, which has been huge. Awareness is definitely rising. We see that among the general public, but also beyond that in our partners and our township trustees and different places like that. The sharing of resources and collaboration has been huge. People are really getting on the same page and excited to work together. Challenges, for sure, we need more active members. It's hard to keep people engaged. For example, in our initial planning, we identified 5 committees we wanted to have. We've really only been running with 2 committees, a technical committee and an education committee, because we just don't have the numbers to fill all of those out. So we're identifying how to engage the right people to bring that back up. And of course, capacity is always an issue. Even though we've built this, there's so much more we want to do, but only so much time, so much money. So working on that. And then finally, I'll just say like how all of this came together, through this effort we heard about first from SICIM and III. Their support and guidance helped us move so much faster than we would have on our own. I think we would have got something going on our own, but there's no way we would have accomplished so much without all of their guidance, encouragement, and helping us make connections, connecting us to resources has been huge. It's also just made it really exciting to be part of a statewide effort, not something we're just doing on our own. So they provide a lot of great resources, a lot of great technical support. Our regional specialist was huge as far as getting us going on the organization side, but also on the technical side. Whenever we had the turnover of that initial employee to a new employee, they were instrumental in helping us get her trained up and ready to do assessments on her own. So those are things that we just have a totally different program if it wasn't for SICIM and the support there. And then just the last little thing I wanted to mention, that Indiana SISMA Leadership Network was another thing I worked with SICIM to develop. It is a Facebook group at this point. So all of these different SISMAs are working across the state, and we're connected through SISMA or through SICIM and through our regional specialists, but it really seemed like we needed a space where the SISMAs could talk directly and get ideas, not so much about invasives work. There's other spaces for that, but this is really just like, show me an example of your agenda. How are you running your weed wrangles? What is your strike team liability policy? Those kind of questions. So that Facebook group has been a really great place to ask questions, share successes, share social media posts, and share ideas, just talk things through. That's been really huge. So I think if your state doesn't have a SICIM and those kind of resources, having some kind of space like that, even if it is just a Facebook group to talk about some of these things and lean on each other in times that are hard and celebrate each other whenever things are going well and you have successes, that's been a really helpful part for me as an administrator of this group. So that's something I would encourage people to try to find or develop on their own as well. So yeah, that's what we're doing in Hamilton County. And we just put out a reel today on Instagram that goes through some of HIP's highlights for the year. So if you want to see that, hop on there and check it out. And I just want to say finally too, that I'm really open and excited to connecting with people about this work we're doing. So anytime anyone has any questions or ideas they want to run through, I'd really be happy to take a phone call or email to connect with people.
All right. Ariel, that is about all for us. The previous slide, there's some contact information there. The previous slide was just to show you that, you know, when somebody creates a logo and if they're bold enough to wear it on their hat or their shirt, they're serious. So our SISMAs are creating logos and they're amazing and they speak volumes. So we've got buy-in in the state of Indiana. And we thank you for letting us talk.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for these great presentations. You have mentioned a really, really comprehensive program that I think not only helpful to learn from in the invasive species space, obviously, but just in terms of any natural resource issues that we might be dealing with. So many things that you have mentioned in terms of increasing awareness. Stephanie had a really great quote at one point. I'm going to botch it, but it was something along the lines of, if people don't know to care, then they likely won't. So I really appreciate everything all of you have shared. Goes beyond invasive species, as I mentioned. So I'd like to remind the audience to please put your questions in the chat box and I'll read those out loud so that we can make sure to capture those for the recording. So we have one question so far. Have you tried to work with agencies that are responsible for mowing ROWs? And if so, had any luck with operators cleaning mower blades? This may be a question for Claire on the very specific technical side of things.
We had some initial engagement with like our highway, our county highway, and some of the street departments. That's one of our target audiences to kind of reconnect with. So no, those audiences have not been engaged really since. No, but we know it's really important, but that's not somewhere we've had success yet.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Claire. Any additional comments, Dawn or Stephanie?
I can add that we do have some counties, and it depends upon the county, you know, and what's going on in each county, but we do have a couple of counties that are trying really hard to engage with their right-of-way partners. It's a hill. We'll get there.
Thank you, Dawn. So I noticed that this question has already been answered in the chat for thank you. So thank you for those that have addressed this as well. But Rachel had mentioned that her county, Link County, was noted as a future SISMA. So she was just curious about where to find more information about that. But I'd like to ask as well of the three of you, where do you see the future of these programs going? And especially, you know, thinking about how Indiana doesn't end necessarily at that border, do you see this becoming sort of a regional Midwestern type program, or do you think it would remain within the state?
We have interest outside of the state of Indiana. We have several neighboring states that have raised their hand and notified us, and so conversation is beginning.
Excellent, thank you. So we have an additional question from New Mexico, where a local community is very anti-herbicides. So have any of you had any experience with similar issues, or you know, recognized other ways to share or to control invasive species beyond herbicides?
Absolutely, Claire, you want to go ahead? I'll let you dive in there. But
yeah, we have a lot of that. You know, particularly like after our pollinator programs, we have people, you know, you're telling us not to use herbicide. I'm organic. So yeah, people like land managers who are doing this work know what is required to deal with a lot of these invasive species. So for smaller landowners, we do, if they're, you know, we help them in their management plan identify like physical control that they can do, but it's also just like a conversation we try to have one-on-one to make sure they understand that some of these things like an herbicide is going to be required if you want to be successful. And I help people like work through that trade-off for, you know, if they're going to start go from turf to prairie or a rain garden, and they want to do it organically or something like that. I really try to help people think through that transition from something that's really, you know, might be resource intensive, or you're transitioning to something that's so much better, you're making the improvement that a judicious use of a correctly applied herbicide is going to do in the long run, be a lot more good than harm. So I think that's a hard thing that I don't know, I'm not sure we really know how to address like broadly, but right now we're working so much with individual landowners or people that are getting management plans that it's easy to have that one-on-one conversation.
Great, thank you, Claire. And it just emphasizes the role of SWCDs as well, because many already have those existing relationships with landowners. And so you know what areas you can maybe push on, what you shouldn't, and how best to engage with your local landowners as well. So we have an additional question about tackling a county-wide infestation. Have any of you had any luck starting in one area and clearing that first entirely, or by starting in several areas at once to engage more people at different locales? So what do you see as the trade-offs in those two strategies?
Ours, we talk a lot about prioritization. You know, a weed wrangle for us is more about education. Yeah, we're doing work, and the work is part of a management plan. But if we're doing garlic mustard pulls, we're improving that area, but we're really trying to educate people so that they can spread that message and go do that work on their property or a different property. And then with our strike team, for example, we're have chosen to prioritize some of our natural areas that are in better shape, invasive wise, so to speak, to protect them from infestations, because, you know, we all know, I hate to say places are a lost cause, but some places are a lost cause. So it doesn't make sense to use our limited resources and technical skills and knowledge in some of those areas whenever we can preserve and protect some of our really high quality areas. So I guess it's just kind of balancing that between what you can be successful with as far as management goes, and how many resources you have to invest to get there, and making sure you're prioritizing your hours with what's possible as far as actual invasive species management goes.
That makes great sense. Stephanie, Dawn, do you have any additional comments or recommendations from scale at which to start?
I'll mention something real quickly. I think that's why the landowner surveys are so important, because that is a whole conversation in itself, and it can be very situational. So, you know, if you have 20 people or you have a landowner who is just doing it on their own, that's going to guide right there what you suggest or what is going to work best. And so it's really depends on the group that you have, the area that it is, the species that you're targeting, and with the group that you have, you know, what age range is that, and you know, what are their herbicide yay or nay, and all of these things. So it can be, there are of course guidelines, but really it can be very situational.
And let me just add, it's also make sure that you engage with your partner. You know, some of that could be on park property, local park property. It could be on a land trust property where you could start. So make sure that those partners are engaged, and that's what, again, what this is all about. SICIM is also about helping, and again, we're bringing those resources to that county. So we have lots of tools in the toolbox for just that purpose.
Great, thank you for that comment as well, Dawn. And so I have a question for all of you as well, Dawn, especially based on what you had just stated, in terms of managing invasive species and some of our other major natural resource issues that we're dealing with. As you said, partnering is such a huge part of the work that we do. So for states or districts that maybe don't have a SICIM that they can look to and take advantage of Stephanie's great leadership, what recommendations do all of you have for potentially getting something like a collaborative invasive species management program going?
One of the places you can start is your state council. most states at this point in the game have a state invasive species council. And I encourage you to reach out to them and ask them, how are they tackling these local issues? We can only do so much from above. But again, if our grassroots people don't know what's going on, if they don't recognize that there is a problem, then it's not going to get solved. So start with that council and see who's on the council and what that council is doing, and then prod them.
I would say too, you might think you know what your partners or what people in your community are doing in this space. But if you really look, you might find there's a lot more happening than you thought. So if you take a really good survey of actually what everyone's doing, and then just try to bring those people together, even if it's just for coffee or something. I mean, at our first few meetings, we offered lunch. That helped. Just bring people together to talk about everything they're doing and share about their successes and their challenges. So you're at least creating a space for everyone to be together on the topic. And then I think a lot of times opportunities to collaborate will just roll really organically out of that.
Stephanie, anything additional to add?
No, I don't think so. They covered it pretty well.
Well, one thing I think all of you really hit in your presentations was sort of the need for consistent awareness and attention to the issue as well. And Claire and Dawn and Stephanie, I think all of you really brought, the engagement with local county commissioners, for example, local audiences, et cetera, and being able to capture that energy in multiple ways, I think is really important. And Claire summarized that so well as well. So we are coming up on the end of our presentation here, and I don't see any additional questions. So I'd just like to thank our three speakers again for this excellent and informative, and someone else mentioned in the chat box, terrific presentation today. I will send around a recording as well to those who have registered, and if all of you could send your presentation to me too, then I can make sure to share that with people so they can use that as a reference too. I'd also like to thank Claire for the shout out to our NACD Urban Agriculture Conservation Grant Initiative. The applications for those are open now until January 31st. So for any districts that may be interested in those, please feel free to reach out, look at our website as well for additional information on how to apply for those grants. And on that note, thank you again to our speakers, and have a great day, everyone. We'll see you in January for the next session.
Thanks.